Hey everyone, Scott here, and today I just wanted to make a video to give my thoughts on this new Agent of Destruction unison that's been revealed and is going to be released in the upcoming set, Supreme Rivalry. This guy was revealed a few days ago. I just basically waited just to see if there was going to be any other Agent of Destruction cards revealed. Doesn't seem like there's going to be, so that's why I'm making this video now. And I'm going to be giving my thoughts from the perspective of someone who has played a lot of the Agents of Destruction deck with the Babidi leader, and that's how I'm going to be kind of analysing this card, is from the perspective of how it fits within that Agent of Destruction archetype deck. I'm not really going to be talking about whether it fits with other decks that may be coming out in the next set. And the very first thing to point out is that because this guy has Agent of Destruction in its name, it means it works with all the cards in the Agents deck that let you search for cards with AOD in the name. And while those effects ask for a card that has Agent singular in the name, there was a ruling put out that when a skill is asking for a singular version of a name, it also applies to the plural, so this does work with all those cards. So apologies to anyone who has seen the very first video I posted on this channel, which was a full Agents of Destruction archetype breakdown. But I am gonna, in this video, be reiterating some of the things I said in there, just to kind of make the points I want to make about the new unison. If you haven't seen that video and you're interested in it, I'll put a card in the top right now. And because when I'm assessing this new unison, I'm going to be making a lot of references to the older Agents unisons, I thought it'd be good just to very quickly reiterate my thoughts on the current Agent of Destruction unisons that we have. My viewpoint is that the Vegeta is the much stronger of the two, and really the only reason you would want to run the Janemba over the Vegeta is because it would give you access to God Sealing technique for free. With that being a blue unison, you can have in play with two markers. You can use God Sealing technique without paying its energy cost, whereas Vegeta gives you access to Frieza Charismatic Villain instead. The general consensus would be that the Trunks is the better counterplay than the Frieza, simply because it keeps whatever they're trying to play from hitting the board, whereas the Frieza KOs something after it's come into play, so if it has any autos that trigger upon being played, they would go off, whereas the Trunks, it goes back to the hand instead of being played, so they don't get those upon play autos, making it the stronger card in my opinion as well. But the way I look at it, that the benefit that you gain for being able to run God Sealing technique rather than Charismatic Villain is more than offset by the decrease in power level of the unison itself. Overall, the Vegeta and Frieza combo is just so much stronger than the Janemba and Trunks one. But obviously with this new Buu unison being blue as well, that totally changes the dynamic, to the point that I would probably say that the Buu and Trunks combo is now maybe only very slightly, but I think it is better than the Vegeta and Frieza combo. I think the Majin Buu unison is just so much stronger that it makes the blue unison and counterplay combo truly viable within an Agent's deck. So let's look at the Janemba and Buu side by side, and we can see what I'm talking about with the Buu being so much stronger. So first up is just the very fact that the Janemba is a 2 specified cost unison, whereas the Majin Buu is a 4 specified cost unison. That just fundamentally means that the Buu is going to be stronger than the Janemba. And usually that would be offset by the fact that it comes out 2 turns later at a minimum. However, within the Agents of Destruction deck, with the leader's skill on the backside, to play a unison with Agents of Destruction its name for 3 energy, with 3 markers on it, means that if you look at playing the Janemba for 3 versus playing the Majin Buu for 3, both with 3 markers on them, the Buu is just so much stronger in that instance. I mean, not only is the Buu an extra 5,000 power stronger than the Janemba, but it also has 2 keyword skills built into it, whereas the Janemba only temporarily gains skills when using the plus or minus. And then I think even when you start to look at the unison skills on both these cards, you can see that the Majin Buu's is just so much stronger within the Agent's deck. I mean, if you look at both these plus zeros here, they both let you draw a card, whereas the Janemba one also draws a card for your opponent. So even just that on its own, the Buu is better. Then you also look at the secondary effects. So with the Janemba, it's putting the top card of your opponent's deck in their drop area. The agent's deck just isn't a mill deck. At this point, there's just not enough effects at the moment to make it a viable mill build. Whereas you look at the effect on the Buu, and it is to be able to switch him back to active mode at the start of your opponent's next main phase, which with him having blocker is just so much stronger than putting the top card of their deck in their drop area. Like, it actually allows you to swing with this guy during your turn and then still have him inactive to activate blocker. And I know some people have made the point about the third part of the Buu's +0, that in the agent's deck your leader isn't blue, so you don't get to switch one of your mono blue energy to active mode. But again, you compare that to the Janemba doesn't let you switch energy either. So when you compare these two +0s, the Buu one is just infinitely better than the Janemba one, in my opinion. Then, I mean, the Janemba does have a way of gaining markers, which the Buu doesn't, with his +1 of gaining critical for the turn. Most of the time when you're going to be playing either of these, you're going to be doing it off the leader's skill with 3 markers on it. So yeah, the Janemba can go up to 4, which gives you a little bit of an extra cushion before you get below that 2 that you need to be able to use the trunks for free. That, I would say, is the one main downside that the Buu has, is there's no way to increase markers on it other than putting an extra copy underneath it once per turn. But honestly, within the agent's deck, with how easy it is to search out your unisons and get them into play, honestly, if your opponent removes your first unison, usually I find you have a second one in hand for the very next turn. So the Janemba having that way of like getting extra markers, I don't think is that massive of a benefit over the Buu. And the final point I wanted to make about these two blue unisons is that when it comes down to it, with the Janemba's skills, I know technically the -2 can be used as an active battle, so it can technically be used during your opponent's turn, but that's very conditional, and it assumes that they're attacking something other than the unison itself. But mostly the Janemba skills are only going to be used during your own turn, whereas the Majin Buu has one skill to use on your turn and then the -1 that you use during your opponent's turn. So it kind of, in a way, almost has more impact on the game because you're doing stuff with it during your own turn and also during your opponent's turn in most cases. So that is another thing that I think is a plus in the column of this Buu. And really, when it comes down to it, I think you compare these two side by side like they are now. The Buu is just so much stronger than the Janemba that it's not even close. It's not even a debate between these two, I think. If you had to run a blue unison in your agent's deck, you would always go for the Buu over the Janemba. It's when you compare the Vegeta to the Majin Buu that things become a lot more debatable as to which is the stronger of the two. In my opinion, of the two, I think the Vegeta is still the stronger unison. That auto of when he's played, being able to wipe your opponent's board, ignoring barrier, is just so strong. And with it being on the unison as well, which is something that you want to play in your deck, it just can give you so much value. And with it being optional as well, like there are plenty of times where your opponent's board's already empty or doesn't have anything on there that's worth KOing, that you just don't even need to drop the card. And then you're just getting him on the board for his double strike critical 25k swing in most cases. The one thing I will say in the Buu's favour is I do actually think that double strike blocker is maybe better than double strike critical, just mostly for the fact that when your opponent negates the attack of the Vegeta, the fact that it has critical rather than block it is irrelevant at that point. Obviously, when the attack does go through and you are able to crit those 2 life off your opponent, it is fantastic, but it's already something that your opponent would, I think, want to negate anyway, just for the fact that it has double strike, which both of these do. And honestly, actually, I think that drawing a card and switching your unison back to active is probably still better than the 5k power for the turn that the Vegeta has. Obviously, in the case of the Vegeta, we're also getting a marker on your unison, which is nothing to sniff at, but I think I would still rather have the +0 of the Buu over the +1 of the Vegeta, because I feel like in most cases within the agent's deck, drawing a card is gonna get you something that has 5k combo power at least. So, but then you also have the potential of grabbing something like the Slug Super combo, at which point you have 10k combo power for the attack of the unison. And another thing that I think the Buu has going in its favor is that it's more defensively capable than the Vegeta. I mean, quite often when you play this Vegeta turn 3 and you wipe your opponent's board, yes, you have the Frieza counterplay open, but if either you haven't drawn the Frieza counterplay or your opponent plays something that has barrier, you can be left quite vulnerable with the Vegeta. It does nothing to kind of keep you alive, especially when you tap out in order to play it on turn 3. Whereas with the Majin Buu, you have two ways to disrupt your opponent's turn. It has not only the blocker, which can take an attack away from your leader, obviously, but it also has the ability to bottom one of your opponent's battle cards, assuming it doesn't have barrier. So that also can be used almost as a negate. If they're attacking with a battle card that doesn't have barrier, you can just put it on the bottom of their deck, and that ends the attack right there. So really, when it comes down to it, I think you compare these two. There's a lot of similarities between them. I like the Vegeta slightly more than the Buu, just because of that auto he has of wiping your opponent's board. But really, when you look at these two, I could see the argument being made to run either of these. Personally, I'm going to keep sticking with the Vegeta, but if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'm running the Agent's deck and I'm using this new Buu AOD Unison, I would say, yeah, that's fair enough. I could definitely see why you would want to. I think this combination of the Trunks and Buu just has a really good balance between offense and defense, whereas the Vegeta is maybe a more all-out offensive kind of card. Because, I mean, say you play this Buu off your leader for 3, you have the +0 that you can use once you played it. You get a card, and at the start of your opponent's main phase, you'll get to switch the Buu back into attack mode, so you can freely attack with the Buu, at which point you have a 20k double strike attack, which is great either into your leader or into their unison either to remove 2 markers. 20k is on the bigger side when it comes to unisons at the moment. And then say you're doing that turn 3 and you've tapped out completely, you're still not completely vulnerable on the backswing, because say your opponent tries to play something big and it doesn't have deflect, you can just bounce it straight back to their hand with God Sealing technique. And then if they do start to try and attack with you with the things they already have on board, you can either put something back on the bottom of their deck if it doesn't have barrier, like I say, or you could use blocker, or you could even use both to prevent 2 attacks basically coming in at your leader. So yeah, while a lot of people have been dismissing this unison as something you wouldn't want to use in the Agent's deck simply because you can't get the third part of that 0 unison skill, I think it is still a fantastic option for a unison within the Agents of Destruction deck. I think it is really good, and it just come down to personal preference as to whether you want to run this Buu and the Trunks or the Vegeta and the Frieza. Like I said, personally, I'm going to stick with the Vegeta. Also because I don't have any of these Trunks. I did have one, but I sold it because the price on it was insane. But even then, I think I probably personally would stick with the Vegeta anyway. I definitely wouldn't disagree with anyone who was wanting to run this Buu instead. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this new unison. If you have anything that you think I maybe overlooked, let me know down in the comments below. If you're not subscribed and you want to go ahead and do that, that would really help me out. Same with leaving a like, I'd really appreciate it. And thanks for watching.